All right, let's get to Teddy Covers finally and welcome him to the show. He's on with us every single morning here on Betting with the Bag. Teddy, how are you on this Thursday morning, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good, Ian. I've had a good week, and when you're winning, you just wake up in a little bit of a better mood than the other way around. So, and I'm impressed with your college hoops, and I love that Cincinnati over for what it's worth. This is what I do with college hoops now. I look at the card every day, and I don't bet a whole lot, but I want to go through it. And I know that after Thanksgiving is when I really start to step up. But the concept of Cronin from Cincinnati to UCLA, what have we seen? Heavy steam on UCLA unders now. And meanwhile, Cincinnati still has all of the Cronin stats in their database, and they're not that team anymore. So I love that concept. I love that look. And I give you credit because I know you're working how many different sports now? And to have as much knowledge as you did, and to spread as much knowledge you did on that little college hoop segment right there, I give you credit, Ian. Good for you, man. That's good stuff.
I appreciate that, but it's at the expense of sleep, unfortunately.
I understand.
We're feeling it.
There's something about November, dude. You just end up, you get big bags in your eyes. You're grumpy with everyone. And then, it does calm down after Thanksgiving when college football kind of takes a back seat for a couple of weeks. And that's when you get a chance to breathe. But from here to Thanksgiving, it's like, I call it like finals week, where you finish one thing, you move on to the next. And you finish one thing and you move on to the next. And hopefully, at some point you get a chance to sleep. But there's not a one of us that's not burning the midnight oil right now. It's just the nature of what we do at this time of the year.
Yeah, and I'll be looking forward. Of course, for years when it comes to my college basketball handicapping, I've dabbled a lot in the Metro Atlantic, the MAAC. I'm looking forward to that starting out in a couple of months when conference play goes. And knowledge of that conference helped me out last night. I went against Iona as 5-point favorites against Ohio. Ohio with a good coach, by the way, there in Jeff Bowles. That was a good hire by that team, a team that was expected to be middle of the pack in the MAC this year. But anytime you get those Metro Atlantic teams in non-conference play, Teddy, and they're laying points, that's a pretty weak conference. As much as I love that conference, it is a weak mid-major conference. And when they're playing at least a decent, team from another conference and they're laying points against that team, I don't mind going against them. And we know Tim Cluse, Iona teams, they don't play much defense. Certainly didn't play much defense last night, losing outright as favorites against Ohio. So I was, again, knowledge of the MAC sort of helped me out there with that one. But nevertheless, Teddy, we've got a Thursday card to break down. We'll start with Thursday Night Football, NFL style, Pittsburgh Steelers, Cleveland Browns. This one's been back and forth, 2.5, 3, 2.5, 3. Good tug of war going on with this number. It's 3 pretty much across the board now on Cleveland as home favorites. Even money, -3, about plus 100 in most locations, total 41.5. I don't buy Cleveland beating Buffalo as a turnaround. I know they're saying we could still make a run. Cleveland is trying to say that, trying to spin that. Trying to use that as fuel for their fire, so to speak. But I still saw a lot of issues with Cleveland last week. Penalties, still take too many. Red zone offense stinks. The play calling is horrendous inside the 5-yard line. Can we finally get a play where we don't run up the gut inside the 5-yard line? Can we maybe roll Baker Mayfield out? Could we maybe do a play action or something inside the 5? No, it's the same boring, pedestrian, predictable play calls and bad red zone offense in terms of play calling and execution that's haunting this team. They're lucky they got away with it and barely escaping with a win against the Buffalo Bills last week. I'm not convinced. I don't love the team traveling on the road on a short week, but you can counter that with Cleveland with a rookie head coach on the short week, and we know long term that's been horrible ATS. I don't love it, but I played a little Pittsburgh +3, and I would lean under the total here in this game. Teddy, what's your thoughts? Steelers taking on the Browns.
Yeah, that's the only way I could play. It would be Pittsburgh. And when I find a public underdog in a single event game, or a very public favorite, I don't tend to get involved. It could only be Steelers, and I could only take +3 with Pittsburgh. But it would only be Steelers here for me. And look, it's kind of an obvious game in that regard. We all know that Cleveland's execution issues have been enormous. The Browns have more talent than the Steelers. But talent does not necessarily equate to winning games and covering point spreads and winning by margin. Remember, at -3, and there's a couple of 2.5s, but mostly it's 3 now. So at -3, Browns win like they did last week is not good enough. They got to win by more than a field goal. And you are talking about, and I watch this team really closely. And the finger pointing, I honestly don't know if I want to point the finger at Mayfield or Kitchens. They're both lost right now. Mayfield is lost in the red zone. The mojo that he had last year is gone. And you see that sometimes with sophomore QBs. A good coaching staff will coach their way out of it, and that hasn't happened with Kitchens. I mean, there's been. If I would have to point my finger at the head coach more than any other factor. And again, this is a guy who was a running backs coach, last year, and then gets promoted to OC, and then gets promoted to head coach, and everything goes great. But reality has shown up for Freddie Kitchens, and right now, among the 32 NFL coaches, he ranks near the bottom in getting his team ready and getting his team to execute. And you can only blame the coach. Talent level is there. And sure, we can blame the players. There's been a million plays. The last 2 weeks, there's literally, it feels like an endless number of plays that the Browns could have made and almost made, and the ball's in his hands and the ball's in this guy's hands, and they just can't come down with it. They can't get the game-changing defensive play. They can't get the big strike TD. At some point, they're going to hit some of those. Maybe tonight's the night. But the Steelers' defense is covering point spreads by themselves right now. I will not stand in front of Pittsburgh in this point spread range. Pass.
All right,
I guess the bottom line is I'm not playing the game. A lot of talk for a game I'm not playing.
That's all right. We want to give opinions and lean Pittsburgh, but not playing it. I did play Pittsburgh again, just a half unit play. By the way, I actually play some props on these primetime games. Usually just the primetime games, Thursday, Sunday, Monday. I usually look at the props, the player props, about 2 hours before kickoff, 3 hours later in the day when I have a little bit more time. I will absolutely be interested in a Baker Mayfield, will he throw an interception? Yes, prop tonight. Especially when you're seeing what Minkah Fitzpatrick's done for the Steelers defense, how he's transformed them, how he's had an interception, it seems, in pretty much every game. He's scoring defensive touchdowns for this group. That's a prop that makes a ton of sense to me. Baker Mayfield to throw an interception tonight. I'll be looking for that one somewhere. I think that's something that's definitely worth a look in this Thursday night game. We'll turn our attention now to college football, Teddy. We got two games, one in the MAC and then the ACC ESPN game tonight. Buffalo, Kent State. Buffalo taking a lot of money here, up from 3.5 as road favorites all the way up to 6, total 55.5. I missed the best number with Buffalo, so I didn't bet it. I would lean to that side. I like the way they're playing. Their offense has come to life in recent weeks. 3 straight wins. They blew out the Michigan schools, Central and Eastern, in their last 2 games. Kent State finding ways to lose, although I will say their last 3 losses have been by a touchdown or less. Their offense hasn't exactly clicked in every game. I think Buffalo's the better of these teams. But again, with this line now 6 when it was 3.5, I'm not going to jump in now. That Buffalo's at -6. I do have some interest in the over in this game, 55.5. Buffalo has been finding their way offensively with big outputs in recent games. Kent State, the question is, what can you get from them on the offensive side of the football? If Buffalo gets you to 35, 38, which I think they're capable of, could you get those 21 points from Kent State to push this game over the total? I think you could. It's another game I got a small play on the over. Lean to Buffalo. That's the way I'm looking here. Teddy, what about you with the Bulls and the Golden Flashes?
So Kent State really is an interesting team to talk about because they faced 3 really hard non-conference games. They didn't play them back-to-back early in the season. They played one and then had a lesser opponent, one and then a lesser opponent, one and then a lesser opponent. So from a statistical standpoint, the Golden Flashes stats looked awful coming into October because they lost 48-0 Wisconsin and 55-16 against Auburn and 30-7 against Arizona State. The offense didn't work in any of those games, and the defense didn't work in any of those games. This is not a step-up-in-class team. When we take those 3 games against the Power 5 foes, and not just any good Power 5 foes, out of the equation, they've been in every game. Every single one of them, and they haven't lost by more than a touchdown yet. They've been a good point spread team in recent weeks. They've been a good underdog. They've been a good favorite. They've been capable of hanging around with some solid teams. Ohio U, Miami O, Toledo the last 3 games. That's not the dregs of the MAC by any stretch of the imagination. All that said, I can totally understand the Buffalo money. When you talk about a team that, has gotten a lot better since September, Buffalo at or near the top of the list. They're pretty good. They've covered 4 in a row, won 3 of those ball games. And it's been about the defense. This, when we talk about the smaller conferences, when you find a defense that can get the job done, those tend to be bet on teams. And Buffalo, that defense has been dynamite the last month. They've given up, the last 4 games. Again, all in conference play, and only 1 against the bottom feeder, Akron. But, 3 touchdowns or less in every one of those contests, and allowing 55 points over the 4-game span overall. That's a good defense and a good defensive line that could give Kent State trouble. So, bottom line for me is I'm not playing the game. Again, lots of analysis and not a wager. I think there's a legit case you can make for both of these teams, and that leaves me on the sidelines here.
All right, on we go to ACC action. North Carolina, Pittsburgh. We've got Pitt laying 49.5, the total in this one. Interesting matchup here with these two teams. North Carolina, I'll be honest, I thought coming into the season, Mac Brown, the head coach, how good is this team going to be? Freshman quarterback, Sam Howell, a defense that was absolutely god-awful last year. Well, they've been competitive. Sam Howell, the freshman quarterback, has 26 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions. I think you got to give that guy a lot of credit for that. The offense has worked well enough, especially through the air with Howell. The defense it still has its blemishes, and it's still not a great defense, but they're certainly better on that side of the football than they were last year. Again, Howell's taken to Phil Longo, the offensive coordinator, who's come over, who's used a little bit more of an up-tempo, spread-based attack with this North Carolina offense, and it's worked well for them. You got Pittsburgh, a team that's found ways to win, I guess you could say. The last game against Georgia Tech, 20-10, but they needed a goal line stand, to keep Georgia Tech out of the end zone at one point in that game. And Pittsburgh, when you look at them, a very pedestrian offense. They're run heavy. Kenny Pickett, is a dink and dunk type quarterback. It's just move the ball incrementally down the field. They do have a really good defense, and that's the one concern. Can North Carolina handle this Pitt defense? That's going to be the question mark for me. But 4-5, when I was looking at this game more in depth, I was seeing a North Carolina team that was talking like getting bowl eligibility is important to this team. They want it. They're 4-5. They're going to have to win 2 of their last 3 games to do it. They've matched up pretty well with Pitt. If you look at recent series history, they're 6-0 straight up, 5-1 against the spread. Last 6 head-to-head meetings against Pitt. I believe they're on a 17-4 ATS run, something in that stratosphere as an underdog, and that includes some really bad North Carolina teams under Larry Fedora that flat out quit at the end of his tenure as the head coach. So Pitt's had no ability to beat this team at all, let alone beat them by margin. Each of the last 3 meetings has been decided by 3 points or less, and I don't want to go crazy about this element to boost the North Carolina case here, Teddy, but the Pittsburgh Steelers are playing at Cleveland tonight. That might impact the crowd at the game tonight at Heinz Field in Pittsburgh. What are you going to choose on a cold night in Pittsburgh in November? I'm going to go out there, watch Pittsburgh against a middle-tier ACC team, the Panthers, or am I going to stay home where it's nice and warm in my house and watch a big, huge game for the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Cleveland Browns when we're back in the playoff race again that the Steelers are? I think there's going to be people that might make that decision. Hey, I want to watch the Steeler game on TV. I don't want to go out in the cold, watch Panthers play at home here. So I'm not saying that's definitely going to impact the crowd and the number of fans at the game, but I think there's a potential anyway that it could impact how many fans are there, and might lessen the home field edge a bit for Pitt in this game tonight. Either way, I'm on North Carolina here, plus the points. Teddy, what do you like in this game?
Yeah, I put the Tar Heels +5 in my pocket on Monday. Might have even been Sunday night. I'm trying to remember. But for either Sunday night or Monday morning, I took North Carolina plus. Every game that they played this year has been, decided with one exception. The Georgia Tech game has been decided by a touchdown or less. Worth noting, they beat Georgia Tech by more than Pitt did, for whatever that's worth. Although Georgia Tech has gotten progressively better as the season has progressed. I do worry about the Tar Heels defense. You look at their last 2 losses: the Virginia Tech loss in OT, the Virginia loss. Both times the defense needed to stop and couldn't get it, and that does concern me against Pitt. And the weather concerns me a little bit. This is Pitt weather, not North Carolina weather. But you talk about the Panthers' pedestrian offense. I was reading an article from the Tar Heels. That had quotes from the Tar Heels coordinators who talk about how they're going to prepare for this defense like Clemson's defense. They've already seen a defense like this, but they're certainly impressed and taking Pitt's defense very, very seriously. Narduzzi, as we know, a pretty good defensive mind. But from a North Carolina defensive standpoint, and the Tar Heels do get their best running back back tonight, which should help. But they're talking about it's going to be a Sam Howell night. Pitt's going to stack the box, and if Howell can make plays downfield against single coverage, Pitt's going to be, going to have to trade points with North Carolina. And I think Howell can do that, even on the road, even in the cold. So while we have seen some Pitt money, the plus, some North Carolina money, the +5 got in my pocket early, and I have no hesitation, no expectation of doing anything with that. I'm going to keep it in my pocket and expect the Tar Heels to hang tough tonight.
Yeah, exactly. And again, 3 points or less the last 3 meetings between these teams. So every game has been field goal game pretty much. And field goal game gets you the money if you're on the North Carolina side. All right, so we talked college hoops, we talked hockey, got that out of the way. We've gone through the NFL and college football with Teddy. So now it's NBA with Teddy for the next part of the show. And then we'll get his updated weekend wagers in NFL and college football to wrap up the show. But we'll go to NBA now. And before we get to tonight's card, NBA, Teddy, is the one sport this time of year from a handicapping perspective for me that goes on the back burner. It's the one that I'm not involved with day in, day out. I'm looking more at college basketball, NHL, and the 2 footballs. But I do keep a very close eye regularly. Almost every game I watch some part of the Toronto Raptors. And I got to say this. Nick Nurse with this guy. Maybe it's too soon to say this. Second-year head coach. I know he won the championship last year. He keeps this up with what he's doing coaching-wise, preparation-wise, adjustments-wise, somehow putting a roster together with depletion and injuries galore like he has these last few games during this Raptors road trip. He keeps this up. We're going to be talking about this guy in the Eric Spoelstra realm. Maybe not Popovich, but I'm saying he's trending toward being one of these coaches you just trust to get the job done, have his team ready to go, be able to, put different schemes out there like a box and one like he did against Golden State in the NBA Finals last year, which worked to perfection. I'm impressed with this guy. This is a depleted Raptors team. To see them just playing so damn well on this road trip, another win for them last night against Portland, I'm beyond impressed with what I'm seeing from him as a coach and from this Raptors team. It's had all these injuries with Lowry and Ibaka, and OG Anunoby went down the other night. That they found a way to still win these games, beat the Lakers, hang tough in a back-to-back with the Clippers and nearly win that game before falling short late. Really impressed with Nick Nurse. Teddy, what do you think of the Raptors? I'll throw it out to you. What do you think of them?
I cashed your winning bet with Toronto last night, so I'm in love with the Raptors today.
Oh, so you're happy.
And
good
Nurse.
Stuff.
And frankly, conceptually, I'm with you 100% of the way. Okay. Think about the run to the finals last year for Toronto. Okay. They're down 0-2 to the Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals, and that's exactly where they've been. Okay. They've been there before. And Toronto loses those spots. And that roster had a lot, they don't rally back and win 4 straight, but they did. Kawhi's going to get the credit. He's the superstar. Coaching staff had something to do with that. And then obviously the momentum in Toronto's favor, the ability to bring that forward. And you look at this roster right now, you're absolutely right. They're missing, and not just Kawhi, Lowry's out, and Ibaka's out, and Anunoby's out. But they had good depth last year. They have good depth again this year. And they have a coach who's seeing things clearly right now, and a team that's hungry to prove something without Kawhi. So I'm with you on the Raptors as right now being a bet-on team and Nurse being a bet-on coach. And I love the Spoelstra analogy, because when you talk to a lot of people that bet NBA, that write about NBA, Spoelstra's name never comes up, as one of these elite. And you and I both know, Ian, there's a lot of coaches, Spoelstra's a moneymaker, dude. Always has been. Yep. In the road dog role, a lot of good roles for Eric Spoelstra. But he's an underrated coach in that regard. He's not Pop. Pop won the titles. Spoelstra had LeBron, is the way that the mainstream narrative have gone. Despite the fact that Pop had a few good players on his roster too. But I'm with you on Nurse right now. He's definitely and the Raptors as a team with the injuries. They're a value-laden squad right now. They're playing good basketball.
Yeah, and it doesn't help to have a bona fide all-star and maybe a blossoming superstar on the team in Pascal Siakam. Man, that guy, it's unbelievable the rise in his play over the last couple of years. Great segue talking about and bringing up Eric Spoelstra. Can we cash a ticket with Eric Spoelstra tonight, Teddy? It's the Miami Heat taking on the Cleveland Cavaliers. First game on the NBA rotation. Miami 4-point road favorites, total 215. I'll tell you what, John Beilein, give him credit. This is a scrappy bunch he's got here with these Cavaliers. They're undermanned, outmanned on a lot of nights, but he's gotten them working hard, especially at the defensive end. see if they can compete here with Miami. Did you do anything with this game, Teddy? Heat, Cavs.
It's the only game in the NBA I bet tonight. And you guys know who I have out there in the chat. I know you know who I have because we talked about Cleveland on Tuesday when they went to Philadelphia. And I'm like, the Cavs are bet on every game. The Cavs are bet on every game right now. The markets will catch up eventually. Right now, I'm going to ride Cleveland. And you talk about Bayline. Boy, you read the quotes coming out of that locker room. The chemistry's there. They've bought in. The veterans get along with the youngsters on that team. Tristan Thompson's been a monster. And coming off a game in which Kevin Love, good look for the win, and it rims out, and he's like, oh, he thought it dropped. We always hear the narrative, oh, they're coming off this disappointing loss, oh, a heartbreaker, and they're not going to be able to bring it tonight. And the results in the NBA are the exact opposite of that. The mainstream narrative doesn't play with what actually happens on the court. The team that just lost the heartbreaker, the next time they come out, they're ready to play. They want to win. Miami, little one-game road trip to Cleveland, a little bit fat and happy. I'm not looking to bet against the Heat, all right? But I'm riding Cleveland right now. I put the Cavs plus 4.5 in my pocket. You can still find one, mostly plus 4s out there this morning.
All right, so that is the one bet that Teddy's got on the NBA card. Right?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm happy to talk the other games, but that's the only thing I bet.
All right, very good. So we'll go rapid fire then through the other games. Chicago, Milwaukee, 11.5, 229 the total in this game. Chicago Bulls get the win against the New York Knicks the other night. It was a revenge spot, too, because Chicago blew a lead at Madison Square to New York earlier in the season, and Chicago got them back the other night. Can they hang tough with this mighty Milwaukee team? That's the question. What's your lean or opinion here, Bucks and Bulls?
I want to see what the Bucks look like without Chris Middleton tonight. You know, that's an impact injury for Milwaukee. And Milwaukee's a team I really don't like stepping in front of the Bucks. You know, I need a good excuse to step in front of Milwaukee. Although there might be some bias. I want Chicago at home. I don't necessarily want Chicago on the highway. So this is a pure watch for me. I really don't know what the Bucks are going to look like. I'm interested to see their pace tonight without Middleton, their offensive execution. It's a watch and learn game, very clearly for me. Kobe White, we loved him in the fourth quarter against the Knicks on Tuesday. I'm not going to ask him to do it 2 games in a row.
All right, good stuff. Dallas, New York. Dallas 7.5-point road chalk, total 215 in this game. And like I say, I'm in and out when it comes to the NBA at this time of year, but I know for a fact Dallas was off a tough loss the other night against Boston. The Red Hot Celtics have won 9 in a row now or something like that. They played great ball after losing their opener. They haven't lost since the Celtics, and the Mavericks gave them a battle but fell short late. Bounce back spot for them. And this New York team, I wouldn't be trusting them with my mortal enemies money right now, the way that they've been going and trending. So to me, just without doing in-depth look into this game, Teddy, I would certainly lay the points with Dallas or nothing at all in this game. What do you think about Mavericks and Knicks?
And this, too, like the Bulls-Knicks game, a revenge spot, this is a revenge spot because Dallas, last Friday, not weeks ago, it's a loss they remember. You know, last Friday, they were 11-point home chalk to the Knicks and stunk. It was, I mean, Dallas, it was one of those games they could not get in sync. They kept calling, kept calling timeouts, and it just didn't come together. And they came out the next night, they're like, no, we're mad now. And I forget who they played the next night, but they just hammered them. So I'm certain the Mavs will recognize and remember that loss. I'm certain that the Knicks, if they're not the very worst team in the NBA, they're number 29. You can make an argument to 29 or 30, but they're right at the bottom. And then the way I want to make money against NBA bottom feeders, you bet against them at home. So it's Dallas or pass. This is the only other one I seriously considered today was the Mavs. The price isn't right. 7.5 seemed to me a little, it was higher than my number. And I think at the Knicks number 30 in the NBA. So it was a little bit rich for me to lay, especially for a team like Dallas that, I worry about them in the favorite role. I like them in the dog role when you're talking about, more than 7 with Dallas. And at 7.5, that means that they don't foul at the end. And then you got to, so they have to be leading by margin. Lean Dallas didn't get there.
All right, lean Dallas, but just few too many points for Teddy to want to lay with the Mavericks in this one. Clippers and the Pelicans. We've got big money coming in on the Clippers. Open 1 up to 4 now Clippers as road favorites in Nolans. The total 235.5 in this game. Well, we know what we get usually with Gentry teams. Not a lot of defense, and we're not seeing much right now in that regard from this Pelicans team. Hell, I remember seeing the Toronto game there last Friday night. That's the game they lost Lowry and Ibaka to injury, and they still shredded that sorry Pelicans defensive basketball team in that one. What's your thoughts, Teddy? Clippers and Pelicans.
It's an impossible game because of the injuries, and we're not talking secondary injuries. We're talking major injuries. Paul George now is expected to play for the Clips tonight, but we don't know if he's going to be playing with Kawhi or not. Kawhi doesn't usually play back-to-backs. He played last night and the first night of back-to-backs, and that's still officially a question mark for L.A. For New Orleans, Brandon Ingram, who has been dynamite for that team this year. He's really, I mean, you talk about a player that I didn't expect anything out of, and all of a sudden, he's just wow. Don't know if he's going to play tonight. He's a big question mark. He's got a knee injury. Okafor is a question mark for tonight. Lonzo Ball is going to be out for the Pelicans tonight. Josh Hart is going to be out for the Pelicans tonight. But when you're talking about Okafor and Ingram for the one team, and then maybe George, but not for sure, and maybe Kawhi, but not for sure for the other team, that's a lot of question marks around elite players. That this is one you got to wait until the last hour before tip-off to get involved, in my opinion.
Lots of injuries, so make sure you check those in the hours or minutes before tip-off. Make sure you know who's in or who's out if you're going to bet that one. Atlanta, Phoenix, we've got the Suns laying 7.5 as home favorites here. Total 228.5, 229. I remember growing up as a kid, and I'd hear this song on the radio. It's an old song by Christopher Cross from the 80s. Sailing takes me away to where I'm away. You know what? Sailing in this game, Teddy, the point spread value on the Phoenix Suns. It's sailing away. The ship has sailed. And you're starting to see now the Phoenix Suns laying the kind of points you would expect from a team that's had the start to the season they've had. What's your thoughts here, Hawks and Suns?
No, first of all, I could flip you off right now. I thought I had put that song permanently out of my memory, and now it's going to be in my head again. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, no, you're kidding. That song in particular,
I could
of all
flip,
songs, has a personal connection
that
to
song. You. That might be one of the worst songs of all time. And it just sticks in your head. So thanks, Ian.
Sorry about that.
But the point you made was absolutely right. And that was when I looked at this spread, I'm like, oh, well, there it went. Phoenix was nice. There it went. We haven't seen the Suns. I don't think they laid this price in any game last year. I didn't go back and look. I can't imagine they did. It might have been some game where someone was resting everyone. They haven't, 7.5. They've laid up to 3.5 this year. This is a whole new point spread range for a team that, look, there's a lot of things to like about Phoenix. And for Atlanta tonight, again, without Collins, without Herter. Herter's not playing this evening. Vince Carter's not really a factor. He's not in tonight. There's some personal situation with him. But it's a shorthanded team, missing key pieces on the tail end of a road. It's not an Atlanta spot by any stretch of the imagination. All right, it isn't. The question is, can you get there with Phoenix in a price range where they haven't been in years? And now not only to win, but to win by margin. And, of course, I mean, the Suns, it's all about the three-point shooting right now. They've hit 11 or more threes, and I think it's 8 straight games. They did it against the Lakers the other night. Wasn't good enough. Too many points, but I don't want the dog. Pass.
Yeah. See, people agree with you in the chat. Eric Nisbet, that song absolutely sucks. And I said to him, yeah, it sucks even more when I try to sing it. So there you go. But nevertheless, on we go. Last game on the NBA card, Brooklyn and Denver. Denver laying 8.5, total 222 in this game. Hasn't been a great crisp start to the season for the Nuggets. Are they ready to lay 8.5 tonight, Teddy, against Brooklyn?
No. I would only play Brooklyn in this spot. But, the quotes coming out of the Nets locker room aren't good. And let's start with the Denver side of the equation. Okay, this team isn't clicking right now for whatever reason. It's like there's something in the gears. Maybe they'll get there, but they're in fits and spurts. The defense, and especially offensively. And Jokic's a superstar, and he's not playing like a superstar. And the supporting cast is playing like a supporting cast. They don't have the go-to guy right now. They're not a team I'm interested in laying this price with. Denver right now is a one-way team. I'll be looking for spots to bet against the Nuggets. But, it's a Brooklyn team, and every quote coming out of there, blew another game the other night. every quote coming out of the Nets right now is, "Hey, it's it's a work in progress. We're getting there. It might get there." The Nets are not what they were last year right now. A huge roster upheaval. They have injuries tonight. They were talking that Kyrie might not play in Denver this evening. So it's not like I'm excited about taking the points with Brooklyn tonight either. If I had to play it, that's the way it would look because I know I'm not laying with Denver. But easy pass for me.
All right, easy pass on the Nets and the Nuggets. So that's the wrap on the NBA card. We'll turn our attention for the rest of the show. We got about 10 minutes left to NFL and college football for the weekend. Of course, every morning on the show, Teddy updates the wagers he's placed with Jimmy on the show. He's already placed a bunch between now and Wednesday's show. From yesterday's show to this morning, Teddy, any new bets that you've placed for NFL or college football action this weekend?
Yeah, I made a handful, but let's talk. So there was 2 games that moved that I talked that I was gonna bet. I was waiting for a 7 with Wyoming, and the 7s are gone. I grabbed a 6.5 with the Wyoming Cowboys in college football, betting number 3 of 53. I talked about Cal. I was waiting for a 7 with Cal. The 7s looked like they were going. I grabbed a 6.5 with Cal as well, betting number 362. And I'm betting ugly. I put UMass in my pocket, and maybe I'll hate myself. I put UCLA in my pocket, too. I understand I've stepped in front of Utah a couple times this year, and it has not worked out well for me. UCLA controls their own destiny, all right? They're catching 21. They win out, they go to the Pac-12 title game, all right? All Utah wants to do is win this game and move on. They're not let's beat them by 3 touchdowns. 3 touchdowns. I get the hook, plus 21.5. I got to the window with the Bruins, so I got some big ugly underdogs. We'll see how it works out. But it's a pretty dog-heavy card in college football for me this week.
I kind of get it with UMass because the question in that game is Northwestern even have it's a horrible defense. UMass, I get it, but does Northwestern have the offense and the quarterback play, which seemingly has been non-existent all year, to be a team capable of covering 41 points, 41.5 points as a favorite? We don't know that yet. I certainly don't want to lay it, but I appreciate your boldness for wanting to take this UMass team. But again, when you're talking about a team of their caliber, which isn't very high, sometimes you're going to get those kind of points to begin with. So that's the updates there. I'll run down what I'm looking at in college football this weekend. Teddy, you can chime in on my thoughts on it if you do have them. I don't understand all the love here for Marshall tomorrow night. Marshall's a very good team. I cashed with Louisiana Tech last week. They were only laying 5.5 against North Texas. I couldn't believe that number, and they ended up pummeling North Texas in that football game. And Skip Holtz is a road underdog. Do you know how good that track record's been over the years? And here it is again popping up. Skip Holtz, catching points, especially on the road, been very good for him over the years. And their only loss this year is to Texas. That's it. It's the only loss for this La Tech team. Jamar Smith's been great at the quarterback spot. Louisiana Tech's defense has gotten better as the season's progressed. Marshall's defense, I don't think, is quite as good this year as it was last year. I like La Tech there in that game. I like Indiana plus 14.5 against Penn State. In a clear letdown spot. I wrote that up in an article I did for some site this week about letdown spots for teams off a crushing loss have been working out pretty good. Look at SMU, what happened to them against East Carolina last week. I mean, that's just one of many examples where the team off the loss in the big game is more vulnerable to the letdown spot than the team off the win in the big game. Remember, and I mentioned that in the article too, Kansas State, Oklahoma. Kansas State won that big game, but they didn't let down the next week. They came out against Kansas and beat up the Jayhawks. So I think it affects the losing team in the big game more, the letdown, than the winning team. So I think Penn State, a little dubious spot. My favorite bet of the week, Teddy, I couldn't believe this number was this cheap. Louisville -4 against NC State. I couldn't believe it. NC State's been horrible. There's no quarterback play. None, zero. I don't care if it's McKay. I don't care if it's Bailey Hawkman. I don't care if it's Devin Leary. I don't care if it's my cousin at quarterback for the NC State Wolfpack. They have no offense right now. Louisville's, I know it was a tough loss for them last week against Miami, but I think Louisville, and there's some quarterback concerns with them too, injury-wise. Mikhail Cunningham, Juwan Pass got injured and out for the season weeks ago. Is Cunningham going to play? But I'm going to take whoever's at quarterback for Louisville and their defense a little bit over NC State. I think it's a dirt cheap number on Louisville there in that game. So I'll start with those: Louisville, Indiana, Louisiana Tech. Any thoughts on those three, Teddy?
So I have Indiana in my pocket. I'm with you 100%. And you want to talk about a team much like Minnesota, not getting a whole lot of respect. Doesn't matter what they've done. Oh, it's Indiana. They're just Indiana. They've been good. And they gave Penn State all they could handle last year. 5-point game last year. I thought that number was a little bit inflated. Certainly wouldn't talk out of that one, being that I have the Hoosiers in my pocket. Marshall, Louisiana Tech is a really interesting game. And you said something that I want to ask you about in this one in particular, and it's not anything I'm involved with. I didn't play it. I'm not going to play it. I don't think. I mean, at 7, I don't think it gets to 7. And but you said that you don't think Marshall's defense is as good as it was last year. And I've been impressed with Marshall's defense on a couple of different occasions this year. And when I see a team like Louisiana Tech that's faced Rice, UMass, Southern Miss, UTEP, North Texas in their last 5 games, and not a one of them plays a lick of defense, and now they're playing a team that does play defense, it concerns me enough. This is a big, sharp move on Marshall, and that's not one that I'm really looking to step in front of. And last but not least, you talk about Louisville. I wouldn't talk you out of Louisville. I wouldn't do it in a minute. But for as much struggles NC State has on offense, Louisville's defense is not, this isn't I'm super excited about laying more than a field goal with this team on the road type of defense. So certainly wouldn't talk you out of it. But it didn't make my card because of the QB injury and because I don't trust Louisville's defense. But it's not anything that I'm like, no, I like the other side. It'd be Louisville or pass. I just passed.
Yeah, and those are the main three. Those are the three I really like. Those in terms of top 3 plays for college football this week, those are among the top 3. And Louisville's probably my favorite. If I had a top play, that would be it. I really like Louisville there. I mean, the other ones I'm considering is Baylor getting the points against Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma surviving for dear life against Iowa State last week. I know Baylor, you could poke holes at their undefeated record, but I think their defense can still cause some problems a little bit for Oklahoma. We know Oklahoma's defense the last couple of games against Kansas State and Iowa State reverted back to last year's Oklahoma defense again. So kind of like Baylor there. And I'm tempted by Tom Herman in the underdog role again. I can't help but not be. It's been something I usually do. I'm a little bit more leery because this is a Texas team that's showing some glaring holes for me on a weekly basis. But I am considering Baylor. I am considering Texas. And I am considering laying the points with Kentucky against Vanderbilt because I think Vanderbilt's a dead as a doornail team. Any thoughts on those, Teddy? Kentucky, Texas, and Baylor.
I have Texas +7 in my pocket. That's what we do. We don't think about it. You see Tom Herman as a dog, you wait for the best number and you grab it. So I didn't think about it. Baylor's on the short list. I haven't pulled the trigger. I'm tempted. You're tempted. We're all tempted. Going around town, everybody I talk to is tempted by Baylor. And everyone's like, well, did you play him? Well, I don't know yet. So it's one of those deals. I'm right there with you with the, it's like a little bit of a head scratcher of a point spread. You're like, really? 10? Shouldn't they open this 9.5 at least? I'm not convinced I'm going to get the window there, but I certainly lean in that direction. And what was the third one? It was another one I had an opinion on.
Kentucky 10.5 against Vandy.
Oh yeah. So that's one I can't lay 10. I understand the desire to want to fade Vandy, and if you find the bottom feeders, you're fading them every week. You fade Akron every week, keep fading them. Yeah, no problem. But Kentucky is not a team I'm comfortable laying any price with anywhere. And again, I mean, they're a frustrating team offensively, and asking them to win by margin is not something I can do. Ask anyone that had them last week how frustrating they are offensively when they get to first and goal twice in the last 5 minutes and can't punch it in either time.
All right, and NFL, I'll run through what I'm looking at there. Man, I'm getting more interested in Carolina as this number comes down against Atlanta. I'm not sold on Atlanta being back because they beat New Orleans. I mean, they were up for that game. They're off a bye. Saints had a terrible football game, their worst of the season. I'm not sure that's a sign of an Atlanta turnaround. I think that's a one-game blip. Let's not forget, everybody wanted Dan Quinn out the door. We worried about effort waning for this Atlanta team prior to that win against New Orleans. I'm not sure that all of a sudden that flips a switch the rest of the year. So I kind of like Carolina there, that number's coming down to -5. The Dallas line, I'm going to be interested in the Cowboys against Detroit. We'll see how that number becomes widely available. Obviously, the quarterback concerns Driscoll or Stafford for Detroit, holding that one up. The one that I really like that I've already pulled the trigger on this week, two of them actually, two more. I laid 10.5 with the Raiders against the Bengals because I think Cincinnati really is that bad. And I love the over in Houston, Baltimore. It just stuck out like a sore thumb to me. I got it at 49.5, and it's just gone up 2 points this morning, 51.5. I still like it at that number. That's just an obvious play. I don't think Houston's stopping Baltimore. I don't think Baltimore's stopping Houston. I know Baltimore's defense has played a little bit better the last few weeks. New England was a decent defensive performance. Cincinnati, I throw that one out because they've done nothing offensively for weeks. They had Ryan Finley at quarterback who wasn't ready to go. That's got extreme shootout written all over it. Texans and Ravens. Love the over in that one. So Houston, Baltimore over. Oakland, Carolina, and what was the other one? There was one more I was looking at. I can't remember now. But yeah, Carolina. Yeah, those three. Carolina, Oakland, and Houston, Baltimore over, Teddy, are my three main plays right now in the NFL for Sunday. What do you think of those three?
So I wouldn't try to talk you out of any of them. The Atlanta Panthers game is an interesting one because, I mean, Atlanta to me showed buy last week. That wasn't blip, that was buy. And I adjusted my power because remember, the Falcons came into the season, they were supposed to be an 8.5 win team, slightly above average team. And every week they dropped in the power ratings. And by the time they went on bye, they were a bottom 5 team. And I made a big adjustment off that one win, because the defense showed up. The markets have made a huge adjustment off that one win, and it's too big. And I'm not going to get involved. I don't expect to get involved with the game. But I thought there was buy on Atlanta. But again, the markets, I mean, if you talk about an adjustment and a real adjustment, that's a significant adjustment off the one game for the Falcons. I'm with you. Let's see them do it twice before we get too excited about Atlanta. No argument with the Carolina piece of the equation in that. You were talking about the Raiders and then the Bengals. I have no problem fading Cincinnati. I'm not going to try to give you any rationale to bet on the Bengals. I'm not playing this game. I don't trust Oakland defensively, and I don't trust Oakland to win as double digit, to cover as double digit chalk. It's just not on my radar. And as for the Texans and the Ravens, of course, dude, you nailed it. And if you like the over, you're on in the chat right now and you want this over. The screen lit up like a Christmas tree earlier this morning, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see more over money. There's still some 51s out there. If you like that over, find one right now and get to the window. I don't think this line comes back down unless there's weather conditions on Sunday, and early reports say not likely.